Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's all feeling sane and in the horrible, grey, miserable weather, and are still okay getting dressed in the morning rather than working on their PCs in their gym jams. What we're going to cover today is we're going to cover a bit of an update on the restrictions and changes since last week, but there hasn't been very many, and Ian will update you on that. We're also going to go through some of the findings through our audits that we've been conducting, some more findings since last week. Touch a bit on cleaning chemicals and some issues that have been raised on that. Look at HSE Spot Checks and riddle reporting. Again, there's been a bit, we just wanted to update you on some information from there. And then we'll update you a little bit on LeisureNet's lockdown recovery survey, a few updates, and then we're going to go over to questions. It's not heavy this morning. There isn't an awful lot that's changed since last week. It's really just to keep everybody in the loop and for another point of contact for everybody to chat if they want to. So with that, I'm going to pass you over to Ian and hope you enjoyed this morning.
Hi everybody, good to see you all again on the clinics. Again, I'm wearing my British and Irish Lions top just to show that we are talking about all the home nations that are involved in this. And hopefully we can go through a little bit about what's happening in each nation. I don't know whether the front page has changed for everyone. If we can move over to the next slide. My slide isn't moving forward. The first bit when it does change is that we're talking about updates in Scotland. Many of you will have heard yesterday or the day before that 11 local authorities now in Scotland have moved into their higher level tier 4, which as of Friday will remain in place for a further 3 weeks, so that's to the 11th of December. Now this level 4 restriction for those local authority areas means that you're permitted to meet others outdoors following the rules, but you're not allowed to open indoor sports facilities. Outdoor gyms can remain open, outdoor non-contact sports are permitted for all age groups, but there are stronger travel restrictions being put in place regarding people travelling between tiers 3 and 4 and being able to move outside of those tiers. So something for you in Scottish authorities with Scottish facilities, you need to look at your local areas to understand what the restrictions are that apply to you. And on the clinic, when we send out the slides, there's a link at the bottom which will enable you to access that information from Nicola Sturgeon's release the other day. Okay, next slide please. When we're waiting to turn over, this is looking at England's lockdown, which clearly we're midway through. Clearly the news coming out, will it be extended, and will there be, if it does end, will there be stronger tiers put in place? Or systems put in place around those tiers. I probably think from the messages being put out there will be. Certainly there will be stronger tier system put in place even if it's not extended, but let's hope that the numbers begin to drop down and that we can begin to look at a brighter future, but until those numbers come down, I can't see there being a complete relaxation of the system again. In Northern Ireland, the fire break restrictions have been extended until midnight on the 26th. Gyms, leisure centres, swimming pools and private clubs may remain open for individual training only. Fitness, exercise and dance classes not being permitted. To the best of our knowledge, there's been no further changes in Wales, although we did get one question which I will bring up under the Q&A section relating to the use of face covering within gyms in Wales. And as far as we're aware, there's been no changes in the Republic of Ireland since last week. Next slide. This is looking at the typical questions or the typical issues that we've picked up while we've been auditing facilities. and these are common areas where not all sites have been able to prove that they've done certain things. So I think it's a question for you to look at yourselves, and to be able to know that you can answer these questions, as it will help you if you do get a visit from the HSE. Have all staff completed COVID-19 training, including what they need to do if they develop COVID-19 systems? Most facilities have done some form of briefing, but they couldn't always evidence it. And clearly across all staff that they had brought back, it wasn't consistent that they had covered all members of the team. So I think it's something you need to perhaps look at, particularly with your coaches that are perhaps peripatetic that move between venues, to make sure that they've received the same awareness training and briefing that you've given to other staff. Ventilation rates, it's the thorny one. Few sites could actually prove that they could evidence what the ventilation rates were and whether they were achieving the 20 litres per second per person. In those instances, we would expect sites to go to the next step, which would be the use of carbon dioxide detectors to be able to prove that there's no massive build-up of expired air within the environment. So it's a question again you need to look at. I'm sure these restrictions will stay in place for some time, so purchasing carbon dioxide detectors isn't going to be a waste, and certainly may help you in the long run keep a safe, healthy building. And our shift patterns and work groups organised to reduce the number of contacts each employee has. While rotas were in place, staff had not always considered how staff are organised. So I think there are things that centres can do to try and minimise those number of contacts and continue to remind staff of the need to maintain the social distancing. It applies to them as well as to public around the buildings. And clearly this is one of the ways, while hopefully a vaccine begins to come online and take effect later next year, that we can minimise the spread and stop us going into a third lockdown or a third wave within the country. Next slide, please. Have touch points been removed as far as possible, including removal of equipment or restricting equipment sharing? While this in the main has been considered well within the gyms that we visited, and doors, etc., there were some areas that hadn't, so vending machines and there were no sanitising points near those or obvious for customers to use, and in the back of house areas such as plant rooms, they weren't provided there either. So again, have another walk round, particularly during the current lockdown, to make sure that you've got the touch points covered. And where you are removing touch points by having doors propped open, please remember, do not compromise your fire safety within the building. Those doors need to be properly secured open so that they will close if and when they are needed by the activation of the fire alarm panel. I know there's a small cost in that, particularly, or there's a large cost if you link it to the fire panel, but you can get smaller, cheaper adaptions that do work and fail to safe. So please have a quick review while we're closed to make sure that where you do have to, you're not compromising the fire systems. Have you displayed your COVID-19 notice, and is it complete? We found that not to be the case in all places, or it wasn't displayed clearly in all instances. And another reminder, just to make sure you've got the latest version. The first ones that came out were updated when they put the 1 metre plus mitigation in place. So have a quick check, make sure it's up to date and is displayed properly. Is adequate signage in place to advise staff and customers of social distancing and hygiene requirements? We found this was normally very well displayed, although there were some missing in certain areas, particular toilets and changing rooms, and particularly as lots of sites are now beginning to think about opening some form of changing facility and showering facilities. Have another walk round, make sure your signage is up to date, it's not deteriorating and looking horrible, and that your sites have got clear information for when people come back in again. And is there a shift check sheet to monitor compliance, and at the end of the day a review or some kind of review? Again, we found a number of facilities have got these processes in place, but there's no one having an overview of the records that are produced on a daily basis to say that cleaning, checks are made on sanitisation points, signage remains in its place. Staff are signing in appropriately that they are not symptomatic or haven't got anyone at home that's symptomatic. So think about those issues and make sure that you are compliant for when you reopen. Make use of this time to do that. Next slide, please. Cleaning chemicals. Again, this is something we've noted with the need to put sanitizers and other chemicals in, particularly those that are used by customers. We need to make sure that we are displaying appropriate information on the bottles. We've seen lots of instances where Ghostbuster type units are being used by staff, where smaller spray bottles are being offered to gym users, and there's no information on them. So where they have got some hazard information that you need to be able to identify it, you need that information, that symbol on it, so that customers know if they're using an irritant type sanitizer, so that they take care of themselves as well as you being confident that the chemical in that bottle is the correct one. So also make sure that where you're diluting rates are adhered to. If necessary, work instructions for staff to make sure that's necessary. Bottles are labelled, chemicals are stored, chemically suitable for the equipment being used, and that you've got your cost risk assessments up to date. Okay, next slide, please. The HSE issued an update during the week on their spot checks and inspections. They're now employing external partners to assist in conducting these spot checks. So it may not be a full environmental health officer that turns up at your door, but it will be somebody authorised by them to call and visit to carry out an inspection. They are there to provide advice and guidance and will take immediate action if you're not following COVID-19 guidance. So they will provide specific advice. They might stop certain actions, issue enforcement notices, and prosecutions where businesses are failing to comply might follow. And you must participate in those checks, as failure to do so can lead to enforcement against you. Again, there's a link when you get the slides out so that you can see updated on that, but these authorised partners have the same powers as the EHO in terms of enforcement or referring back so enforcement action can start. And for those who perhaps saw the London news last night, there's a gym owner in North London that's currently facing fines of £67,000 for refusing to close his gym during the second lockdown. So be aware, they are enforcing, they are making sure that we are complying, and I'm sure you don't want to be one of those caught in that place. Next slide, please. And also they issued an update on COVID reporting. Now then, this sounds a lot worse than it is. It's really about blatant disregard of the rules. Lots of this reporting really relies on laboratories and test centres where they are conducting experiments using biological agents. But clearly, if you had a known member of staff who should have been isolating or has COVID symptoms and you're bringing them into work, you could fall under this if someone else is very close to them and contracts it. So just be aware that there are COVID reporting requirements under RIDDOR, but within our environment it's probably very unlikely, but you just need to be aware of it. We have added onto our onto our accident reporting platform COVID incidents as a criteria, but you should be recording on your own recording systems COVID incidences within your centres. And again, just contact us if you're unsure. Next slide, please. So what else? What else can you be doing? I think we discussed this last week, trying to make use of the time where you're not developing income to make sure you perhaps look at your business continuity plans and update those. I'm sure this isn't going to be the last restrictions that we face. but hopefully we're looking towards a brighter future with the news on the vaccinations. But we've got some way to go, so it's worth making sure they're up to date and that you have them ready for unfortunately the next time these type of closures might occur. Sort out your files, archive old documents, make sure training and reinduction is up to date, update training records and prepare your training plans for next year, review your risk assessments. And something that we're very aware of, that lots of people are feeling isolated and lonely, particularly during this second lockdown. With the weather, it seems to be affecting more people. So please keep talking to your staff, keep involving them. Just be aware that they, like you, with all the worries of running a business, are going through similar worries about their job security, their job futures, and what the future might hold in store. So try as far as you can to keep them involved, keep talking, and try and address some of those issues. And I think there might be other areas you might be able to consider. So if anyone wants to put those on the chat, please do, so that when we come to the questions, we might be able to make some suggestions for other people as to what might be capable of being done during the remaining period of this current lockdown. And I think I hand over to Caroline now.
Hi everybody. Just a few other bits of updates that aren't necessarily completely COVID related. LeisureNet, I'm sure you're aware, did a very interesting Lockdown 1 recovery survey, and there were some fantastic results that came out of that. They're just doing their Lockdown 2 survey to see whether or not anything has changed since last time. So if you are part of an organisation, it would be brilliant if you could email David Monkhouse at LeisureNet to take part in that survey. Any figures that we've got that can analyse how well we're doing as an industry, it can only help our cause going forward. So if you do get a chance, if you could email them, that'd be great. Next slide, please, Joe. Same as always, obviously you should all be getting our information briefs. They do go out most weeks unless there's nothing to report. So please sign up to us either by Twitter, LinkedIn, or ping us an email to info@rightdirections and we'll add you to our mailing list. Those obviously go out every single week. So, next one I want to say is obviously we are here to support, so if you do need any virtual support days or on-site support days, give us a shout. And for those of you who are either struggling with their Stitch platform or don't have it, please get in touch and you can join us free of charge on workshops on a Monday at 4 o'clock. And as we said lots and lots of times, please make sure that your risk assessments are up to date. If you are using those on Stitch or not, make sure that they are updated. Next slide, please, Joe. Okay, so just to let you know, we've got our Quest Prime clinic tomorrow. So for any of you who haven't sat in on it before and are interested to know what the new Quest Prime looks like, please join us tomorrow. If you would like to join us, email us at info@questmbs.org. And as you can see, the picture's slightly changed since the last couple of weeks. We now have a logo that Sport England have agreed to. And those will be window stickers that will be going out free to anybody who goes through Quest to demonstrate to their customers that we're good and ready to go. And I think it looks far better than the Visit England "we're ready to go." So if any of you who are going through Quest in the next few months, these stickers will be coming your way. If you get satisfactory or above, and anybody who goes through it in the future will also get those stickers, which is great news. And we're also adding information onto our Quest website for any customer that wants to know more. They'll be able to go in and see what it's all about. Those people who've been involved in Quest for many, many years, I just wanted to update you on some news at the weekend. One of the Quest assessors who assessed me back in the 1990s and was a really lovely Quest assessor, a guy called Chris Bamfield. He went missing at the weekend whilst windsurfing and is presumed to have unfortunately passed away. So if you do know anybody who was Quest assessed by Chris, or you were, please let your teams know. And also if you know of any Quest assessors who may have known him, obviously our condolences and thoughts are with his family. So very, very sad news during a very awful time. Jill, could you put me on to the next slide, please. We will be launching our first training, online training, on top of the COVID training next week. The first 2 courses we will be launching are understanding risk assessments for managers and risk assessment awareness for frontline staff. So the first module is all about writing them, how to do them, what you need to think about, how you record them, how you manage them, how you review them, all the operational management side of risk assessing, which, as you all know, is absolutely fundamental to any business. And you can see over the last 6 months, the government have said that the risk assessments are absolutely paramount. So it's the same for the rest of the business as well. And certainly the first thing that any HSE will look into if there is an incident. So that's training for managers. Then we're also going to be doing risk assessment awareness for frontline staff. I mean, obviously their knowledge of what's going on in the centre and mishaps and things that potentially could go wrong and have gone wrong, and the responsibility that they have of reporting those things and how that fits into a risk assessment process. So those two new training programs will be coming online next week. So if you are interested, please let us know. Again, as you can see, we've kept the price very, very cheap, so that more people can do it and gain from it. Next slide, please, Jill. Further courses that will be coming up in the future: safeguarding Legionella, asbestos and fire marshal, but it's risk assessment, the first one that will be coming out next week, and hopefully the next few will be coming out by the end of November, if not early December. So next slide, please, Jill. I'm keeping on her toes, look. Our next client will be on Tuesday the 24th of November, so that's next week. We've got a couple of guest speakers from trusts. I think for all of you who've sat in on clinics before, having real people talking about their real experiences is as important as the old folk from Right Directions updating on the legislation changes. Sorry, Ian, that wasn't meant at you, by the way. So we think it's really paramount that we hear the real news of things that have gone right and things that have gone wrong for you guys. So we've got 2 more guest speakers next week coming in, one from a trust with lots of varied facilities, and also a large contractor on how they've dealt with things, including elite athletes back in during lockdown and things like that. So that will be really interesting. And on the 1st of December, we've also got a guest speaker coming in who is our environmental health officer, who represents us as part of our primary authority that we have with lots of our clinics. So again, that will be kind of hearing it from the other side of the fence, which will be really interesting. So hopefully you guys will want to come along then and listen in. So next slide, please, Joe. Right, I'm going to hand over to Jill and Ian to discuss questions. I don't think we've had very many this week. I can't see the chat, so I don't know what's gone up on the chat, but over to you, Jill.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Just to add to what Caroline said about guest speakers, we haven't got a confirmed date yet, but Tara Dillon from Simpspa will be coming on one of our clinics in December. We think it may be the 8th of December, but that's not been fully confirmed, and we will let you know. Okay, Ian, are you ready for the questions?
Yeah, I hope everyone will put up with the boring old me. I know it's good when we do get other people involved. It makes my life easier. So
I think it's boring old me too. So we're in that together. Okay, just
and me.
A question has come in, not on the chat today, but this has come in via info around face masks. What is our position on face masks with exercise? The question that's come in is that do they need to put the face masks back on in between exercise, say from a treadmill and walking across the gym to a cross trainer?
I don't think the guidance is clear. This actually came from a question from Wales, where face coverings was a new issue for them within facilities when they come out of their current lockdown. And their EHO was advising they thought that they should, when they aren't exercising, i.e. moving between equipment, not wear face masks. clearly we don't want to fall out with the HOs. I would have thought and pointed towards the World Health Organization. If someone is exercising and breathing more heavily, they're going to have the same effects for a period of time after they finish on, say, a treadmill. So I would have thought, well, if you get questions like that, I would go back and refer to the World Health Organization and advise that someone should be able to move between equipment without wearing face coverings. But certainly from coming in the front door through changing to going into the gym, they should be keeping that face mask on to reduce the risk and then taking it off once they start exercising. I don't think that's a definitive answer, but I think it's as good as we're going to get.
Okay, thank you, Ian. It may be something that we can ask Dan from our primary authority when it comes on in a couple of weeks. A question in the chat around level 4 restrictions in Scotland. Non-contact is not allowed. What about football training?
From my understanding, and this is coming from colleagues on the chat, that so long as it's non-contact, fitness training, etc., I believe is acceptable. I don't know whether Jan can correct me on that or whether that's right. Jan, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, just unmuting, Ian. Yeah, I mean, certainly at the moment, the only thing that we've seen that's come up on the government website, put it that way, is just talking about non-contact. There's no sort of further definition on that, so I think it's a bit of watch this space. I know certainly with Scotland, the rules on tier 4 have been there, but yeah, certainly, obviously, because we've probably not taken a huge deal of notice about it until yesterday when Nicola's advised that a number of local authorities are going into tier 4. I think we just need to look in further detail. But at the minute, I think, as you say, I would go with what you're saying, Ian, on non-contact, provided it's non-contact. I think that could still go ahead.
Yep.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, next question. What locations would you advise for carbon detection units to be installed? Would this just be for the gym and studios, or do you think they should have them in sports halls and changing villages, etc.?
I would suggest it's in the areas where you are going to get a build-up of people. If you've moved all your exercise classes down into your sports hall and you've got spin classes in one half and exercise in the other, and you aren't confident in the air exchange within that room, then it may well be a very valid place to put it. There's normally guidance with the equipment that comes out that recommends the height above the ground of which it should be located, and you need to think about how it's affected by other fresh air exchanges that might happen. So close by a door might not be the best place. Somewhere where you're going to get potential build-up in the quieter spots within the room might be the more appropriate locations to measure the build-up of CO2 within the room. Changing rooms, if you've not got many people in there and you're confident on your handling in there, then possibly you can put it in there once and check it during a changeover period. But in the main, I would put it in your main activity areas.
Thank you, Ian. Neil from Wales, Neil from Newport Live is on the webinar, and he said he's happy to make a comment about face masks. So, Neil, are you there?
I am. Good morning, all. You okay?
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, only it was we raised this because it was our trading standards officer that visited our sites, and their feedback was very positive on the whole. But what they have asked for is that we do ask customers to wear their face masks in between equipment within the gym. So we have modified to do that, but we are being so somewhere in between where trading standards and Ian has explained today, in that if we've got, for example, one of our pieces of is a bio circuit where people are constantly exercising and short rests moving between on a circuit, and they won't wear that. But if they are, for example, taking extended rest, chatting to another or a colleague or whatever it was in a one-to-one session, obviously distance, then we would be asking them now to put those face masks on. And the other point that they picked up is that some of the instructors didn't have their face masks on. So that was the reason why we've done that. And if you read the Welsh link that I put in the chat, there's a bit more information in there. It is open to interpretation, the instead. But that's the approach we've taken.
Thank you for that, Neil. And it was your point that raised that issue. I think there's been a couple of other questions raised around it. I think also just a reminder what a face covering is. It's not a visor. It is something that is worn over the face and the mouth and nose to restrict the spread of your expired output. So if staff are thinking they can just wear a visor, that doesn't count, certainly not in England anyway, as under the definition of a face covering on its own. It certainly can help the stop of droplets, but not of aerosol.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for Neil for jumping in there. Just to round off on face masks, Ian, there is a statement in the chat which says face masks. Nothing in UK guidance says face coverings to be worn inside gyms or leisure centres. Can you just clarify that point?
I know lots of operators have gone down this route. Certainly in Wales, they have now clarified that. From memory, I think at the latest lockdown or before in certain tiers, they want people in indoor venues to wear face coverings. So I may not be directly in our guidance, but I would have thought it's good practice, if not, that you should be getting people to wear face masks up to the point of exercise.
Thank you, Ian. Again, this is a statement in the chat which if you could clarify, please. It says just to say that there has been a change in the guidance in Wales regarding to 12 to 18-year-old participation.
Yeah, we just picked that up. It's as you say, it's relating to young people between 12 and 18, and there are no limits on the numbers for under 18s in organised activities as far as we're aware.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Okay, moving on. Question in the chat that's come from a PT. I'm a bit worried about our yard classes. Carpet is not allowed and participants must not mix. This was pre-lockdown. Are there any regulations involving the flooring?
We don't see there being any problems with flooring. It's more to do with making sure people don't mix. It depends on what exercises you're doing. If people aren't on the floor and they're told to sanitize their hands after they perhaps gone down and crouched and touched the floor, we see there aren't, as far as we're aware, any issues or guidance directly related to the surfaces that you're exercising on.
Thank you, Ian. Again, a bit of a statement and going back to ventilation. What about external doors open to assist with this and make use of free fresh air? I think we've discussed this in previous minutes. Would you just like to clarify where we are with ventilation and fresh air and doors?
Yeah, if you haven't got mechanical ventilation that you're confident does deliver the correct number of air exchanges, then certainly one of the options is to increase fresh air through other means, such as opening doors, windows, etc. Again, without compromising the safety internal compartmentation of a building. Anything that does increase the fresh air is good. You do have to consider whether drafts are taking fresh air though, and make sure you're not compromising that. And I know the latest guidance issued by the HBA did give more detail regarding that, so that's something you might like to go and have a look at, the Heating and Ventilation Association's latest guidance on ventilation, which talks through some of the issues that are connected with windows and doors being opened.
Thank you, Ian. A question around, that's come in from info, a question around pandemic procedure. Where should people be with their pandemic procedure now? I know that that Right Directions wrote a pandemic procedure right at the start of the pandemic. What should people be doing with the pandemic procedure now, as things seem to be changing quite rapidly?
I think it's a tool for yourselves. It's a tool that might help you in the future, in the near future, but also one that if you keep it constant and you include it in your general review, might help us if we ever encounter anything similar to this in the future. So it's certainly an important document, one that might come in useful. I hope it never will have to be, but it's one of those things just to protect your business. And the more you can think through the issues we've learned from this and make sure it's up to date, ready for the future, then the easier and better it is that you're going to be able to survive something else coming through. So it is a tool for your own benefit. I know those who have used it have commented on finding it beneficial in making sure they can tick off everything's been done, particularly just before reopening. So it is a tool that we feel is beneficial, and we know others have felt it's beneficial, but it's a tool for you. It's something that if you do keep it updated, it could well help you in the future.
Thank you, Ian. Just a couple of statements that have appeared in the chat. For Scotland, check with the national governing body for the guidance for individual sports. Thank you for those people who've put links in for Wales guidance on face covering and individual sports up in Scotland. And somebody's again has just put a link in for face masks. On that note, unless anybody else has got any questions, we've come to the end of the questions this week. So I will pass back over to Caroline to close the clinic.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Hopefully you found this morning worthwhile. We hope you all have a good week, and that we reopen our facilities in December. So fingers crossed everything's working, and obviously keep an eye on what's happening on websites with guidance and webinars. There's lots going on, so for those of you who are going stir crazy, who are furloughed, there are plenty of interesting UK Active. We've got their national summit free at the moment. There's lots and lots going on, so good time to keep updated or potentially do free online courses and things. So and obviously if you want to do our risk assessment for managers course, please let us know. It'd be fantastic. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you all next week. Thank
Caroline,
you. Go on.
Caroline, just before you go, sorry, that I think this is quite important. There's been some more update in the chat around face masks,
Okay.
and somebody from Caerphilly is saying that the guidance that Neil's been given by the WHO is different to what they've been given. Ian, what advice can we give to people on face masks if you know it does appear that they're getting different guidance from different EHOs? You're on mute, Ian, sorry.
From having watched the chat come up, I think the guidance isn't too far from each other. It's the face coverings are certainly to be worn to the point of exercise. I think it might just be that particular EHO that has interpreted the bit in between. As Neil clarified, it's the extended time between each that they were worried about. So I think if you're getting people coming in doing a set and then sitting and chatting to somebody else, then clearly they perhaps should be putting their face covering back on, as opposed to someone who's doing a constant circuit. It's interpretation. I think it's what keeps your gym safe, and you keep other members in there feeling safe as well. So and it's a lot easier to adopt one rule than it is to have exceptions to rules. So it's how you use that. I did see somebody else put something that it is required in facilities that you do wear face coverings up to the point of exercise. Thank
you, Ian. Sorry, Caroline, to have interrupted there. I think that was important. Do you want to?
Not a problem, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll see you all next week.